Today, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo outlined how stay-at-home restrictions could be eased for parts of the Empire State. Meanwhile, the state's election officials take the dramatic step of canceling its presidential primary. New York City is also ramping up testing and closing streets to cars next week. This as the state reported just 337 deaths yesterday, the lowest tally this month. Still, more than 17,000 people have died in New York since the start of the outbreak. BNC's Liotus is in New York City with a busy day for the Big Apple.
Could New York unpause next month? The current date is set for May 15th, but it may depend on your region.
So we want to unpause. May 15th is when the pause regulations expire statewide. I will extend them in many parts of the state, but in some parts of the state, some regions, you could make the case that we should unpause on May 15th.
As for that potential reopening, there's a lot of criteria that will need to be considered.
You want to reopen a region, what is the health care capacity in that region? How many beds will you have available if that number goes up? How many ICU beds will you have available? And are you contemplating what's going to happen when the flu season kicks in September, where we could potentially now be dealing with COVID cases on top of flu cases? You have to test for both and possibly have hospital capacity for both. Do we have testing in place? And is testing ready to go? Because testing is one of the main monitors, right? Do we have a tracing system in place? We all talk about testing, tracing, isolating. That has to be in place. Test people, you then trace the contacts, you find the positive people, and you isolate them. But you need a tracing system.
Right now, there's also a push to help farmers and food banks. It's been reported farmers are having to toss perfectly good food due to lower demand. Now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is launching an initiative to purchase some of those dairy and food products from farmers. He also announced on Monday that help is coming to emptied food banks.
We're seeing a tremendous demand in food banks, which is predictable in some ways. But the numbers are very, very high, and we need to address it. 200% increase in Westchester, 100% increase in New York City, 40% on Long Island, 40 to 60% across upstate New York. So we're going to commit $25 million for emergency funding for those food banks.
Those food banks depleted after New Yorkers flocked to them to help feed their families. Gathering at locations and threatening public health is something the New York Board of Elections is hoping to avoid come June. So much so that it made an unprecedented move on Monday. Due to coronavirus, New York has canceled its Democratic presidential primary scheduled for June 23rd. The state still plans to hold its congressional and state-level primaries on that same day. As for those still scheduled elections, voters can choose to vote with a mail-in ballot if they're concerned about their health. Reporting in New York City for the Black News Channel, I'm Liotus.
And the decision to cancel was left to Democratic state election commissioners. Both the state's Democratic Party and Governor Cuomo have said they did not ask election commissioners to make the change.